Yeah, although everybody thinks he's going to have this baby.
It's taken on a life of its own.
Ladies and gentlemen, a baby is not a life preserver. You don't throw a drowning man a baby. In fact, I remember when my sister had her fourth kid, I said, "What's it like?" She goes, "Imagine you're drowning in a swimming pool and somebody throws you a baby." Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jonathon Buckley, and welcome to A Lot More, this time from New York, as we continue Pitt Week here at the A Lot More studio. And who better to chat to than the man himself, the glue that sticks it all together, Noah Wyle. Noah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for finally having me on. We've just discussed, you've talked to everybody.
I would want to say congratulations, but it's quite broad because it's congratulations for so many things. Congratulations for getting the show up and running, which is no small feat, and then creating the show, which is fantastic, helping write the show, which is amazing, and then from there you've gone on to win awards, and you've now got your star on the Walk of Fame, which, by the way, I got to see, and your face was priceless. It was like a kid in a candy shop.
Yeah, well, my first candy shop, I grew up on that street, and a lot of my speech was talking about chapters that have occurred on that street that were really significant, from my birth to meeting my wife to my first professional engagements, and a lot of daydreaming in between. It was really special day to be there with my kids and my parents, and to feel so much of that goodwill coming my way. At the tender age of 54, felt really, really good.
Did you used to walk down Hollywood Boulevard and just kind of like stare and read the names?
I, at one point, used to memorize them. I could go blocks and blocks and recount them from memory without having to look down. And there was an actor named Noah Beery Jr., whose star, I used to put my foot over his last name and look at just the first name and think maybe one day.
Maybe one day.
Yep.
What does it feel like to look back at that, to think now like how far you've come to find yourself in this position?
This whole thing has been kind of pinch me. I've had a really wonderful career. To a large extent, it was front loaded. ER was such a massive experience that it was difficult to match. And I spent the next 15 years looking for that sense of relevance and resonance and sense of community and buy-in and total creative satisfaction, all those things that job afforded me. And I didn't realize what rare air I was breathing while I was breathing it, as
right.
It's very hard to recognize that you're part of something special while it's ongoing. And I, thought to myself back then, and if it ever comes back around again, I'm going to play it a little differently. I'm going to try to be a little bit more present, a lot more grateful, recognizing that these moments are finite and precious, and rarely does lightning ever strike twice. And suddenly it struck me, in the most synchronistic way, playing a doctor and going back to my favorite Dream Factory to play it and to work so closely to where I'd started my career, and with so many people that were part of it too. It's pretty amazing.
We got to talk to John Wells, an amazing human being, so gentle and kind and humble, and he was telling me about first meeting you, and you were 22 at the time, I think it was.
Yes, it was.
Wow, it would be hard to sort of understand and conceptualize, like you said, that you had that lightning in a bottle moment already at that age. I've had experiences like that in my own life where success comes very, very early, and you think like, oh, well, this is just how it is, and everyone just says yes, and I'm off to the races. And how does that feel looking back?
It was an amazing, golden experience. Perspective is the benefit of longevity, and you don't really have the ability to have perspective until you've got something to compare it to. So I was happy in a sense to get the balance. It was very important for me to figure out how to get validation that wasn't external, that wasn't coming from a public approval, because it's an unsustainable paradigm to live your life under. And I had gotten on that hamster wheel of assuming that every year would bring a nomination or another job or climbing another rung on the ladder. And when that ceased to be the case, it really kind of did a number on my self-esteem, until I kind of figured out that the pursuit is less interesting than the process, and the arrival is less interesting than the journey. And if I reframed the whole thing into just being about the experience and the quality of the experience, or the relationships or the work, I tended to go home happier. And so I put my head down and just went to work every day. And then I picked my head up and realized, oh my God, look where I've landed.
Did you have a few quiet years where you're scratching your head going,
Quiet. Too quiet.
Really?
I mean, I've been very blessed in that I've worked pretty consistently, but there was a few years, especially I've talked about my two sort of most vulnerable periods were during the pandemic and during the strike, because they were the first work stoppages that I'd ever experienced where I couldn't work even if I wanted to. And that's when I really became aware of how I use work as therapy, as catharsis, as creative outlet, as socialization. It gives me orientation and meaning. And when I don't have a water tower to go and work under, I tend to not really know where my true north is. So I don't take for granted work ever.
Do you still get a kick? I personally get a kick, but do you get a kick when you get to walk on the lot?
Walk on the lot. I get a kick now because I'm on a show. I've got this little sensor on my headlight that allows the guard gate to go up as my car approaches. I don't even have to show my ID to the guard anymore. And I mean, my face is painted on the side of the studio currently, so I shouldn't have to show my ID. But it's incredibly exciting each and every time that gate opens, and I just get to drive like on my own personal tram ride through that studio, and there's my parking place, and there's my dressing room, and there's our set. I've been the kid that wanted to jump off the Universal Tram Tour since I was 8 years old and just live in the sets and live on the back lot and just be around show folk, and just that was the circus I wanted to join. That was the only party I ever wanted to attend. Man, it's still the most fun place in the world for me.
Did you ever think there was anything else? Like, it's a tough dream to have, especially if you grew up around it. You would have seen people try and get in and not fail, but just not get to where they're going. Did you ever have that thought of like, this is an impossible situation, I might try something else?
Not vocationally. You know, what you do is you try to come at it from another angle, which is why I started writing, which is why I started directing and started looking for material that I could produce. You try to not just be totally in a reactive state to the industry, waiting for your phone to ring and being given permission to do what you love. You try to be a little bit more proactive and self-generating, at least to sort of feel like you're not being stuck in stasis. But I never thought about doing anything else. I don't know that I'm well suited to do anything else. Maybe teach or, something, but this is kind of what I'm built for.
I'm so impressed with your writing as well. There was a scene, we spoke to Scott, and it was a scene in, I think it was episode 9, where you did a scene as Dr. Robby, and it was talking about the boy that you'd lost. And it was such a masterful piece of writing. That was when I was already really thoroughly enjoying the show, but I was just like, wow. So you came in and you started talking about this boy that was lost, and you got so deep, and I was like, because I think most of us, if you're a fan of the Pit, are sitting there, want to know about Dr. Robby. What's going on? What makes him tick? And we get so close to get this piece, this nugget of information about what makes Dr. Robby tick. And then just as you get into the meat and potatoes of the story, Dr. Robby, you've got someone in a patient
fighting chairs
and got pulled out of it, and you left me on the edge of the seat, and I was like, I need to know where that was going.
That's kind of you to say. A friend of mine called me up and goes, only you would write a confessional monologue and then cut it in half.
Not to sound like I'm blowing smoke, but I feel like you deserve all the accolades that you're getting, not only for your performances, but I think that the writing, I thought that Scott had written, or one of the other writers, but he was the one that told me that you had written that. And I was like, wow, that was...
Well, that was the first time we really saw the depth of the character's emotion, what's underneath, as he starts to tell this ancient story about his first day as a resident at Big Charity Hospital in New Orleans, and this kid that comes in, this emotion comes out of nowhere, or not out of nowhere, it comes out of the compartment that he stuffed it into 30 years ago after it happened. And you just get a sense, just a glimpse of, oh my goodness, there's so many compartments inside this guy and they're all overflowing. He's not going to be able to keep the lid on much longer. And so it was one of those, just enough to give a window into how deep we could go. And then the rest of the season is a sort of removal of the architecture of the mask that he's maintaining, and then season 2 is even farther in that regard.
Yeah,
season 3 will be even more.
I'm excited. I know that you guys are back in the writing room at the moment, getting ready for that.
Yes, we are.
Were you surprised at the success of the Pit?
I had a secret belief that the thing that made ER special was its humanism, and that there had been a real vacuum of shows like that on television, and that we were living in a moment when that could be a real lighthouse kind of program for people. But that was a speculative guess that I think borne itself out, that if the election had gone the other way and the country was in a different place, I think we'd be a really good show. But I don't know that we'd be as an important show. But people are tuning in to watch, what they call expert porn, or people be really good at what they do. But I think they also are tuning in to watch people have work that has real value and meaning and makes a difference in other people's lives. And I think a lot of people feel the lack of that in their own work and their own ability to contribute, a desire to contribute and have meaning, and not the ability to. So they vicariously are living through these characters a bit.
You're not shy about tackling the issues, for sure. Is that part of the effort going into it?
We're not shy about showing what people that are on the front lines in healthcare worker positions are facing daily. And a lot of those, are the same issues that are facing the general public, but magnified because of the high stakes environment that they work under. So emergency rooms are great catch basins for all of society's ills, because that's where all of our broken pieces end up to be patched back together. So you can pretty much trace anything having to do with economics or race relations or narcotic trends or vaccination rates, anything that we've been talking about societally, you'll see the ramifications.
It's like the great equalizer. We all fall there and we're on the same level.
100%.
The opening scene in season 2, you came in, you rode into work, no helmet on, but you had your helmet. And I was like, I'm thinking to myself, what's that about? Why is he carrying the helmet? But I think when we get to this finale, we see possibly why that was written in. Correct me if I'm wrong, but is it kind of the idea that Dr. Robby's tempting fate a little bit? Like, hey, if I get taken out here, it seems like he's going through some stuff.
It was a real audible call. We had written, he wears a helmet. The prop department showed me this wonderful catalog of helmets. We chose the helmet that we thought Robby could both afford and would be stylish for him. And then we got to Pittsburgh to shoot the scene, and like the night before, I just kept thinking, what if he doesn't wear that helmet, but he tells everybody that he does? What if an audience sees him not wearing it, and yet, they'll be privy to a secret that the rest of the characters won't know? And I pitched it to John, and we went back and forth on it, and we actually shot it both ways. But I just kept thinking, and he agreed, that this character's playing not Russian roulette, but he's letting the fates dictate the course of events right now. He's taking his own critical judgment out of the equation and letting the chips fall where they may. And that is a great way of introducing that notion that this is a guy who you can't necessarily believe what he's saying, and that he doesn't necessarily even know what he's doing.
It is kind of concerning at the end to sort of see where his head's at. He's in a pretty dark place, isn't he?
The darkest.
Yeah.
Darkest. I think he was drowning and didn't know it in season 1. He didn't know that he'd filled his compartments to capacity and that this was going to be a breaking point day. End of season 1, he can't go home and pretend that he's fine. Mm-hmm. But a few months later, he's been able to regulate. He's found a hobby. He's got this utopian idea of taking this trip. But I think there's been this increasing sense of disassociation building and an inability to stay in this work and not have this work continually add to the problem. I think that he's been asking for help, pushing help away, wanting to find help, having to be the help. It's been an unenviable place to be. And I think we finally see him work through, over the course of second season, get to a place of like the possibility of hope that hadn't been there before.
That hadn't been there.
I don't know that he found too many reasons to go on, and found a lot more reasons to sort of leave the movie early. And then at the end of the season, I think he hears himself giving this advice to this innocent, another abandoned soul in this room that's totally loaded with emotion and memory. To someone who won't be able to repeat what he's about to say, he starts giving a hopeful prognosis for her future. 10 seconds after he was just outside with Samira saying, okay, well, are you giving me that advice just for me, or would you apply it to yourself? And if you wouldn't apply it to yourself, then you're being a hypocrite. And here he is doing the exact same thing. So as he says it, that there's still wonderful things to see and people to love ahead of you, I think he realizes that must be true for him too. And it's the first time we've seen him entertain the possibility that he might have a healthy prognosis.
I think a baby will do that to a lot of people.
Yeah, although everybody thinks he's going to have this baby. And I'm like,
It's taken on a life of its own.
ladies and gentlemen, a baby is not a life preserver. You don't throw a drowning man a baby. In fact, I remember when my sister had her fourth kid, I said, "What's it like?" She goes, "Imagine you're drowning in a swimming pool and somebody throws you a baby." Yeah.
Yeah, the fans have really taken to Baby Jane Doe.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you, Catherine Lanasa, for saying Baby Jane Doe in a way that kept that entity alive all season long.
It's carried on. So, do you think we will see Baby Jane Doe again? Is that the curtain call? Was it a margarita shot for Baby Jane Doe?
I did a pre-interview for the Today Show, which I'm doing tomorrow, and that was the first question she asked me: "Is what's going to happen to Baby Jane Doe?" And I thought, well, it would be pretty irresponsible of us to not acknowledge that this is something that people really do care about. So, in some fashion, I think we have to understand what happened to that baby.
Do you get any downtime between? Because we were chatting to some of the writers from the writers' room, and you're straight back into writing and prepping for season 3.
To come back on an annual.
Congratulations, by the way, for getting renewed. I mean, it was. I want to say it was an obvious thing, but it's never obvious.
Never a guarantee.
Yeah,
it's a short hiatus to be sure. We shoot from June till about February, and in order to be back into production by June, we really need to start the writing room no later than February. So as soon as we wrap, we're back to work, and the writers get a little bit of time. I took a couple days in Europe after we launched HBO Max in London. I'm here in New York for a day or two, playing hooky from the room. But for the most part, it's a 12-month-a-year job for me. As long as I'm in the writing room, which I love being part of and helping craft the season and be part of the collegiate atmosphere of all those big brains that sit at that table, throwing spaghetti on the wall. And I said this year, if there had been something else that came up during the hiatus period that I was really intrigued by, more than being in the writing room, I might have done it. But right now, I'm so happy with where I am. I'm so just like, don't rock this boat. Let's just keep sailing.
I can imagine it'd be easy to just be grateful with what you've done and expect, like, I had my good time, and then, but to have this is kind of like you're at your pinnacle right now. I feel like when it comes to your personal,
a long way down now, isn't it? I feel creatively very capable at the moment. I feel like I'm at the top of my game. I feel like there's a lot of life left in these characters and in this narrative, which I wasn't totally sure about. After season 1, we kind of left it all on the floor as if it was going to be a one and done experience. And coming back for season 2 was a little bit of that, oh shit, what do we do now? And then suddenly we realized, oh no, all we have to do is figure out who these people would be 10 months later and how they'd be feeling. Maybe that'll be interesting viewing enough. And that was the speculation. If you take the mass casualty event and the nervous breakdown of the protagonist out of the architecture, is this still an enjoyable show to watch? Is the aggregate toll of a shift and all these different characters engaging enough without that deus ex machina outside plot contrivance to come in to kind of give you a catalyst? And I think it stands on its own. And as the show progresses, we can continually go back to those kind of bigger storylines, but not having to rely on them for dramatic tension or architecture is really significant.
Was there some sort of pressure or like an expectation going into 2 that you had to have like this big event that needed to happen?
That was alleviated by John Wells like day 1. He came in and said the job is not to be bigger, better, faster, funnier, scarier, bloodier. The job isn't to do more, it's to do it again and go back to the thesis of what you did the first time and try to stay true to that. And he really allowed us to not feel the pressure of needing to outdo ourselves, and actually said that that would be a really bad idea for us to try and chase that adrenaline. Let's try and figure out, if the threat was external last time, let's make the threat internal this time. Let's really go inward and turn this into the mental health journey that it should be. And then we can get back to talking about other things.
Which has been a big theme this year as well, which has been that mental health aspect of it as well. Obviously, you've got all of the injuries and the nuts and bolts that happen in an emergency room, but it is a whole other layer that needs to be explored as well with these characters. Everyone's got their journey going on this season as well, from Dana and Langdon and now Robby as well. Like,
I don't know who said it to the writers. It could have been me, but I doubt it. We shouldn't really think about these characters as characters. We really should think of them as extensions of ourselves. And whatever they're doing to survive their day is what we do to survive our day. Like if you're drinking too much, if you're yelling at people, if you're watching too much bad TV, if you're having junk food problems, if you go home and stand on a scale and don't like what you like, whatever that is that you don't like, that you're masking, that you're covering, that you're coping with, that's what we write into your characters. They're not arm's length. They've got to be one-to-one with how we live our lives, because that's how the audience is identifying with them as reflections of themselves. So we don't have the luxury of distance and objectivity. We really have to work close to the bone.
From a technical perspective, how do you feel as a performer now? When you hit the set running, it's like, is it like being an athlete that's been training and you can kind of walk onto the set, the jitters are all gone and you feel strong when you come in to do a day's work? Or do you still kind of have struggles or challenges with particular parts of a script or scenes that are more difficult than others?
Well, every job is different, and every job brings its own neuroses to it. This one, it speaks to so many of my strengths. I spent 15 years building this muscle memory of how to use these props and how to say these words. So that is very comfortable for me. Working on this lot is very comfortable for me. Working in an ensemble is very comfortable with me. There's not a lot of anxiety when I go to work. There's a lot more excitement and anticipation. I know what you're asking, and it's true. There was a couple of years ago where I realized that I was playing the music without looking at my fingers. I was putting the ball in the court wherever I wanted to put it, and I was doing it consistently enough that I thought to myself, and this is when I was in my kind of leaner days and I was really kind of looking for work and feeling a real disconnect between how I was feeling about my craft and the opportunities to play. This is the first job that really came along where I was like, okay, I know that I'm feeling really strong, and here's an opportunity to show it and showcase it, and it just worked.
It sounds very freeing at that point, too, to really kind of lean into that.
It's the most liberating thing in the world when you can go to the orchestra pit and say, what are we playing? And not, oh, God, how do I play it? But like, how do we want to play it? How do we want to interpret it? And when it's not technical, it's interpretation. You're playing with a finer set of brushes. It's a lot more rewarding.
By the way, congratulations on your cast too, because they're all fantastic.
Unbelievable, right?
You've found all these people.
That's the other way to stay sharp, is put really good players in your row and want to keep up with them.
But all from varying stages of their careers. Some very successful, some it's their first job straight out of theatre school. Do you find them looking to you for guidance, or do you look to them for a fresh take?
Both. Both. I don't know that they look to me so much for guidance, but when we were meeting with DPs, I remember thinking, like, I just want to staff this thing with pros. I just want pro. And in my head, I guess I thought a pro DP looks like an old man. So that when Jojo Calejo came in and sat down, I was like, And then she started talking about the show and the filmic language that we could employ, and showed us, her vision book, and started speaking about what she would bring to the job. And I was like, okay, pros come in all shapes and sizes. I don't necessarily know what one looks like until one's in front of me. So yes, to your point, all those actors are varying degrees of experience and various ages, but they're all pros. They all showed up with the one thing in common, which is that they work hard, they take their work seriously, they don't take themselves too seriously, and they're really committed.
I've been fortunate enough to actually go and wander the set, which has been phenomenal with your amazing set designer. And
Nina Ruscio.
She's incredible. Like
Genius.
Her talent, passion, and what she's crafted over there is just...
I'm sure Scott or John told you that we had the set constructed conceptually before we ever started filming, because we needed to write to a fixed space. So before we'd even written on the show, we hired Nina to build a set so that we could visualize the space that we were going to be inhabiting for 15 hours. So she was the first hire, and she really kind of, her enthusiasm, creativity, attention to detail sparked it for all of us.
She's done such a good job. The little details. It's like the roof paneling. I was like, you did that on purpose, didn't you? She's like, oh yeah, the roof's in it all the time. I'm like, these little details that make this set feel endless, the way that it curves around. And when you're in there, I didn't even realize I'd come back to the start. So you can shoot these scenes flowing and walking, and there's no end.
Glass and staged action going back 3-4 tiers. It's remarkable the texture that set affords us. And Nina's artistry is matched by our prop department and by our camera department and by our costume department.
Yeah.
Everybody that works on that show is an all-star, which is a benefit of working in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Is the talent pool there is ridiculous. It's generationally deep.
Yeah.
And extremely rewarding to bring a show back to LA where there's been so little work. But getting to utilize that talent pool means that 1 + 1 = 3 every day, because people bring their A game, and it's incredible what they can do.
And you were passionate about bringing it back to LA too.
I'm passionate about sleeping in my own bed for a change.
Yeah,
as was
instead of
John
being on the
Wells
road.
and Scott Gemmell. We've all been on the road for a long time. But even more than that, I'm an Angelino, third generation, and have such a love and respect for our industry and its history that, the fact that we've lost 41,000 jobs out of Los Angeles in the last 8 years. Those are middle-class union jobs. Those
It's
are
not
families.
just your on-camera folk. It's everyone.
It's the backbone of our industry. And as jobs chase tax credits around the country or around the world, and sometimes not only avoid paying full fees, but also get around union restrictions, it's even more gratifying to bring a show back to prove that it's still economically feasible to shoot a show in Los Angeles and creatively advantageous.
Do you have high hopes for the future of Los Angeles, or are you concerned more so?
I have perpetual concerns, but only because I'm a romantic and a sentimentalist that doesn't like change. And if there's only one thing that's constant, is change. So you go back and, Warner Brothers wasn't always Warner Brothers. For a minute, it was the Burbank Studios, and there's a lot of studios that don't exist anymore, and their libraries have been absorbed by other places. So that it's an inevitability. But like I said, I started there. I'm so sentimental about it staying beige.
Yeah,
And that
you don't
water
want to change
tower
that
looking
color.
just
Yeah,
like that. But
a couple of fan questions just from the internet. So I thought I'd ask you a couple of them. What do you think happens to Baby Jane Doe?
I don't think she's going to go home with Robby, everybody. I don't think that would be good for either one of them. Okay. However, I do think she's going to get placed in a good home, and I do believe that our staff is going to keep tabs on her.
Will there be any cut scenes from season 2 released?
There are a lot of cut scenes. We shoot 80-page scripts, which, the adage is usually a minute per page. So if you're shooting a 60-minute show, you have a 60-page script. We have an 80-page script, 75 to 80-page script for a 47-minute show. Part of that's because we talk so fast, there's so much dialogue, but also we overshoot so that we can trim it down to just the elements of the storytelling that we like. And sometimes that means having to take whole scenes and storylines out in post-production. So there's some good stuff on the editing floor. I think the shows are better for the edits, but that doesn't mean there wasn't good work.
This is probably a little preemptive, but does Duke survive the surgery? And I guess I'll just follow up with my own. Will we see Duke again?
I like to think Duke survives the surgery. I like to think he adheres to his post-operative course. I think Robby will keep tabs on him. I think Whitaker will keep tabs on him. I think that would be a rough one for Robby to lose in his absence. But all that stuff's being discussed in the writer room currently, and nothing is being committed to because, the one thing you learn when you're in a writer room is that you could throw a bad idea on the table and people will kick at it and kick at it and kick at it and kick at it just to prove it's a bad idea. And just when you're about pretty much convinced that you should never have said it, somebody will kick it one last time and a diamond will pop out the end of it. And you're like, oh, that's why we do this, because you never know.
Yeah.
You just never know. So until these things have really been wrung through for all their possibilities and consequences, anything's at play.
You've had some cameos in the series from your wife and
Yes.
Some other family. Fiona DeRiff's dad, we spoke with Fiona. She's lovely.
Yeah.
Her dad was in the series as well.
Yeah, we've had a couple. Sean Haddis's wife was on too.
Yeah. Will we see some more of that going forward, some more family appearances?
I don't know. My wife and I were laughing. We, at the beginning of every season, there's a call sheet, and I'm number 1 on the call sheet, and then there's 2 and 3, and goes down the list. And we have so many actors that come on our show, but by the end of the season, there's actors that have, 393 or 497 next to their name. And when my wife worked, I was like number one, and she was like 362 or something. And I was like, nobody's going to accuse us of nepotism when you had to wait 362 other parts to audition for this one.
It was a solid role, though. I liked it. It was good.
She did great.
Yeah.
You know, she's a phenomenal actress. We met 15 years ago when I saw her in a musical that she just took my breath away. And she's dedicated the last 10 years to raising our daughter and has only recently wanted to get back into the game and scratch that itch. And so this was a wonderful building block for her to, you know, get back in the game and for people to see what she could do. Although her coloring is not usually that yellow.
Not quite as yellow.
That was enhanced coloring effect.
Does your daughter get a kick out of this sort of stuff?
She hated her mother going to work. She's
really?
Like, she's like, you're my mom. That's what Dad does.
That's Dad's job.
No. Your mom is an actress too. Your mom's an artist too. So she'll get used to it.
A lot of fans talking about a potential spin-off of The Night Shift.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you handle another series?
You know, I said offhandedly the other day that I think we're getting enough Night Shift, and I think you want more, but you're getting, you know, what I think is appropriate. Somebody wrote, Noah Wyle is so aggressively annoying and patronizing and pretentious. And
well, that's like, nice.
Yeah, no, that's all true. That's all true. And I still don't think you need more Night Shift. Those are great characters. It's a wonderful energy.
And I feel like the Night Shift is going to have its own set of problems too.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. You know, interestingly enough, we're sort of, you know, if you talk to people that work night shift, you know who works mostly night shift? Mothers. Because they like to be free for their kids to be home during the day. So it's a lot less wild and woolly and a lot more boring and sedate than you would think. But those are great characters. We love bringing them in. I'll say personally, I feel like when you have something that's a really good thing and it's working for you, you don't want to dissipate it too quickly. Yeah. You don't want to bleed it off into other narratives and franchise it out because I think you kind of you dilute the potency a little bit and you get everybody over familiar with the arena to where it loses a little bit of its specialness. But what do I know? You know, could be a great show.
Well, looking forward to season 3. Are there any issues that you personally maybe haven't been thrown into the writer's room yet that you'd like to highlight? Because the series has been pretty consequential. I think that the response from healthcare workers has been remarkable with the honesty with which you write and the accuracy with which you've portrayed this room.
Nothing that I could identify other than to say that as the show scales globally, my instinct is to narrow the narrative down to a more finite point, like to not try to expand into going home with these characters, you know, breaking the format that we've already established. You know, I came in at the beginning of season 2 and said 15 episodes for a 12-hour shift. It's kind of tricky. We had the mass casual event in season 1. I have an idea that might help us in season 2. What if we just took the first hour and the last hour and called it commute, and we just wake up with everybody where they are, and we show their ride in and how they get there, and punching in is the end of the first hour, and conversely, we see everybody go home and have to contextualize their day to who they love and who they live with, and we see the flip side, and all the writers are nodding their heads like this, and Scott looks at me and goes, yeah. No. I was like, why? And he goes, well, we probably will, you know, in seasons 3 or 4, you know, that is always going to be available to us.
Yeah.
The challenge is going to be, can we keep to our thesis and do it more elegantly? Can we learn from what we did last year and do what we're trying to do even better before we go back to the low-hanging fruit of what's possible? So I really enjoyed that discipline. I think the writers benefited from that discipline of not having the ability to expand the narrative beyond what we're allowed to see in that emergency room. And for the next season or 2, I'd love to try to stay as true to that as possible.
Yeah. You mentioned season 3, season 4. How many seasons do you think you would go for where you sit right now?
I think that there's a 5 to 6 year story, a mental health journey to tell in Robby's arc that I would really be gratified to play all the way out. I think, you know, we established these characters in the pit, and it would be wonderful to see them all climb out.
Well done for an amazing job. You've done
really
so
thoughtful
good.
questions. You had really good.
All the awards keep coming. I think, you know, you've got Time 100, and then you've got tomorrow, I believe, the Peabody Awards are announced as well, which is which is really something. I make a prediction right now, but I would say that the Pitt is thoroughly deserving, and so I wouldn't be surprised if you'd take that one as well. So
That's a lovely thing to say. And I work with some amazing people. Years ago, in those fallow periods, I had this little mantra that I would say to myself to hopefully change my circumstances. And I would say, please put me in the company of first-class artists with good hearts and minds doing meaningful work. And I would repeat that over and over again. And there was a day in season 1 sitting in that writing room where I looked around and I was like, oh, look what you did. You create a situation where you're surrounded by first-class artists with great hearts and great minds doing meaningful work. Mission accomplished.
wow, good on you, Bob.
Cheers.
Great to chat.
Likewise. Thank you.